Right, the Bodo review. We've got even more to chew on. It's getting slightly exciting as a Man United fan, right? Again, we have to preface all this with the barren decade that we have had to chew on anything interesting. So yeah, the Bodo Glimt game showed still signs of fragility, but also showed signs of improvement in a lot of areas. Now, we are working with a specific pool of players with a specific level, right? So that has to come into the context every time that we speak about these performances. But there was a lot of good things, and I think one of the probably more refreshing things for Amorim, like he stated, all he wanted to do was win prior to the game. I think what's good is the messaging for the players, like he stated. If you keep showing, if you're training and you're working on things and then it's not working out in the game, no matter how nice and smiley you are and how well you are socially, eventually cracks are going to appear in the belief of the players in regards to what you're showing them and what you're asking them to execute. So I feel like Amorim's refreshing press conferences yesterday turned into a somewhat refreshing performance, and I think that continuity from what you speak about and then what is actually seen in the game is very important. And then I think that kind of keeps Man United fans really attentive to everything that he's saying, and we're not fighting back at like past trauma and demons, right? When we watch the game, and I feel like Man United dominated possession throughout the whole 90 minutes. Bodo Glimt were a very physical, very quick, pretty technical team, to be fair. And apart from 2 breakaway goals where I think there's some good finishes in there, and I think that, yes, there were somewhat seemingly big gaps that appeared, and it seemed quite easy to cut through. But the higher press and pressing higher, and that kind of the emphasis that Amorim put on maybe Johnny Evans not pressing so high. I felt that Martinez probably went when there was. And when you're learning new structures and you're learning basically like a new curriculum, a new syllabus, right? You will take everything literally, right? At the beginning, everything is taken literally because you want to get the information that you've been given, and you want to put that into practice in its most literal sense. So Lisandro on the second goal, when Malacia got burnt, obviously he's gone running like crazy to press higher onto their midfielder, but their midfielder's maybe 10, 15 yards outside of his own box. So Martinez, instead of kind of understanding what's needed from Amorim and what he wants from him, but then also in certain scenarios, the self-preservation has to kick in certain elements to be able to take executive decisions on the pitch. That comes with being more comfortable in scenarios where then you can start taking onus putting the onus on yourself in certain situations. So yeah, we still see the fragility, but that's to be expected. But yeah, I feel like probably another one of the most kind of like refreshing things to see is actually scoring 3 goals. Now, one of the biggest issues for me in this system, and what has been evident in these first 2 games when looking at the starting lineups, is the forward line issue, right? So that's coming from Ten Hag era, where it was probably the front 4, so it was the 3 and the 1, right? So the Rashford, Garnacho, Bruno, and Højlund, right? That basically was deemed not good enough as a quartet under Ten Hag, and we were not scoring anywhere near enough goals. Now that quartet in this system now gets turned into a 3, right? So the onus is predominantly put on those 3 players. So what we probably saw in the Bodo Glimt game is glimpses that this front 3 problem could probably now just be narrowed down into who should play in those number 10 roles. Now, this is not me saying that Højlund is like sealed, guaranteed quality, because he's just not, in my opinion. That's my opinion. He scored a great goal yesterday and has scored some. He's proven that he is not a bad finisher. He still doesn't know how to use his physicality or his speed or his strength, but there seems to be some shoots coming from the Højlund kind of conundrum. It's not as bleak maybe as once thought, and even though it is Bodo Glimt, what we might have seen yesterday is that Højlund can be a good enough stopgap for Amorim to still build the team. The team can progress with Højlund at the spear of the attack, and he can be used as that bulldozer. Now, will he be the striker for Man United when we're trying to go for titles or challenge for anything serious? 1 second. My battery's going to go. Yeah, well, we know the answer to that is 99% no. Like, can Højlund have this huge uptake in improvement to the point where he can be deemed the guy to take us to Premier Leagues or Champions Leagues, right? Because that's the only real interest here, isn't it? Bringing all this new structure in, bringing this manager in, trying to be serious Manchester United again. The only reason for that is for Premier Leagues and Champions Leagues, right? So Højlund isn't going to be that figure, but I feel that against Bodo Glimt we saw that he can be effective and he can score goals, right? Give him 2-3 chances in a game consistently and he will score consistently, I feel. Now, if we can agree on that Højlund probably is the outstanding candidate for that role for the foreseeable future, for this season, at least, then we have to look at these number 2-10 positions slightly differently, because then they need to have certain characteristics to suit and to match up to what Højlund offers. You need 2 number 10s there that are actually really, really, really comfortable on the ball, on the half turn. They can still be dynamic in the press, but they need to be able to offer for the ball in the half spaces and in between the lines and consolidate possession in those areas. And personally for me, that would be Ahmad and Mainu. I'm saying it over and over again. I think Xerxes also, as he improves and just builds himself into his Manchester United career, I feel that in the not so distant future, Xerxes is a viable option in one of those 10 spaces, and I think he is now. But personally, I feel that Ahmad and Mainu can offer slightly more dynamism in those roles, but also with like really, really good quality on the ball. And I feel like to connect our defence and midfield with our kind of bulldozer spearhead in Højlund, I feel like 2 number 8s in Ahmad and Mainu are imperative, those style of players. Now, we had Garnacho and Mount with Højlund, and I understand that he likes Garnacho to kind of basically be able to break in behind when the ball's on the other side. Garnacho does offer a threat in behind, and I feel like that kind of threat, and he kind of makes the 2 with Højlund. I think that threat is something that Amorim obviously really likes. So we have to see whether the threat of Garnacho being able to break these lines and breaking behind the defence and offer that threat is more desirable than having somebody that's like really securing the ball in those areas. And I feel like if you look at Mount in terms of him getting on the ball, he had 35 touches. Compared to Garnacho's 59, right? And we wouldn't even consider Garnacho somebody that wants to hold possession or hold the ball necessarily. And then just in regards to, there we go, like carries, I understand Garnacho is going to carry the ball a lot more than Mount, but this Mount's output in terms of on the ball, personally, I don't think is humongous. So if we look at defensive actions, one tackle, in the mid, just one tackle, a couple of blocks, couple of interceptions, but Mount's kind of overall performance. I understand that Amorim likes Mason Mount's profile to a certain extent and wants to kind of revive what he did at Chelsea. And I feel like, when Mount under Lampard at Chelsea first breaking through with no injuries and just a more kind of like hunger in and around for goals and assists and being kind of like quite an okayish number 10 in parts in that season, I think he just kind of like drifts through games. And I understand that he probably does a lot off the ball, which is not even evident for me when I'm watching on TV. But I feel like those two players, you don't have to trade off so much. Like Mount and Garnacho is too much of a trade off. So I feel like probably now in terms of with Amorim, I feel like he's played Garnacho in one of those positions, one of those 10 positions, in both games. So maybe the next game for me personally, if Garnacho starts another game in that 10 position, I feel it's going to be a bit more of like, I'm going to get not worried, but I'm going to be like, so it seems like Garnacho's here to stay in those areas. And then I'll have to completely rethink what Amorim wants from those 10 positions. He wants a more threat in behind with one at least. And you might find that it probably could end up being Garnacho and Mainu. So then you have got one, so that he balances it out. The way that he likes to balance out his wing backs, with one being a defensive-minded player and one being a actual winger. Maybe with those number two, with the 10 positions, he likes to do that as well. So you might see a Garnacho or Rashford playing in the one to be able to make up the extra striker when the ball is progressing up the field and predominantly on the other side. And then you have more of a technician on the other side to be able to basically offer a more traditional 10 role. So as plays progressing, you end up having Garnacho and Højlund up top with Mainu in behind, right? That's kind of how it would work. It's like the way that sometimes the three in midfield. Let's get the board up. Yeah, so if we look at this three here of Mount, Garnacho and Højlund, what we're saying is that, right, let's go Garnacho there, and let's put Mainu in here just to kind of talk about how it would go. So if the ball's with Mazraoui here on the in the right centre back position, and it's gonna, like, Anthony's probably further out here. This, like, Mainu in this kind of like this more technical player would come over. Højlund would come through, obviously, into the channel, and then Garnacho would make up the two. Bruno would then move forward, and then De Ligt probably steps up, or Martinez steps up, creating this 4-2-2-2 that kind of seems to pop up quite often as plays building. But also, if you think of this three as in a 4-3-3 formation, you would have this kind of thing going on. And then this three here would operate, forget the names on the shirts, but the way that a 4-3-3 would operate if you're playing in a more modern kind of style would be like this, right? So this three, this midfield three, the way that operates as a triangle and the way that it can shift, and in defensive scenarios it drops back and makes a 2, so then you've got it as a 4-2-1-3, etc. When you're building up progression in the right back area, this midfielder is probably going to want to come forward a little bit more, and then you kind of make that a 2 again, right? A 1-2. So the way that, let's try and get this back to some something that makes sense. So the way that a midfield 3 works in a 4-3-3, just that kind of fluidity with it, is probably what he wants with the front three. Yeah, let's say. So as the ball is moving across, and say like again with Mazraoui, this front three again, it starts moving, and then you start kind of basically getting into more of this kind of shape, and that's where I'm thinking in build up and when the ball is progressing, he's probably I feel like gonna want Mainu. I think he's prepping him for this role. And then it would make sense why Garnacho is always playing, right? If he needs to have this straight line dynamic speed that can join Højlund on the last line, and then you've got your technical 10 that can actually operate in these spaces. So you have one technical 10, and then you have one dynamic 10. Me personally, I was thinking that you'd want both to be technical, and then there's enough dynamism with Ahmad and Mainu that they can do this role. They can both make up the second man. But they can really, balls can get knocked into them from the right centre-back. Anthony can clip balls into Mainu, and Mainu can hold, bring Bruno into play more, and then we can come out and when we can get out more and we can see those balls where Malacia is all the way up here, and then those balls are being played into acres of space, right? So, yeah, it's interesting. That number 10 position is very, very interesting. And maybe Garnacho, even though I don't necessarily rate him so massively highly as a player, maybe that he's being used for that, for those scenarios. And then that's where maybe Rashford has his only chance, right? Because we can also, obviously, in these scenarios, if it is Mainu, then Rashford can also play here, right? I mean, I think Rashford's just cooked completely, but Rashford's got to believe yourself on his boots. Imagine, being Man United number 10 and playing for Man United for like nearly 10 years, and you've got to believe in yourself on your boots. England international, this mega star apparently, and needs to remind himself to believe in his abilities or whatever abilities that he has, right? But anyway, this is Rashford's only hope, this position here, because he won't play in the wing backs because he's too big time, obviously, in whatever way you want to take that. But yeah, this inside left channel, more centrally, is the only real hope for Rashford. But I just feel that Garnacho does play that better. Also, I feel like if we're going with my preferred two here, Ahmad can really play that role of being that dynamic player. He also has enough straight line speed. He's technically amazing, and I personally think that that should be the 2 10s. But Garnacho and Rashford do have some life left for now, because maybe Amorim likes to kind of the player profiles in those 2 10 positions. He doesn't want them to be too similar, and he does want more dynamic straight line speed from one of them. So yeah, and just moving on to Dalot. I think that when Dalot came on, it showed it's one of those, isn't it? We can all eulogise about Dalot's performance against Bodo Glimt. He physically was able to keep up with Bodo Glimt, whereas a lot of the players couldn't. And we saw Malacia's first game in 48 years, Anthony's first game in that new position. So when someone whose best attributes are his physical elements to his game, again, he's very one-dimensional in my opinion. I think he's not great in the pocket. He was finding himself in those inside midfield positions again, and I don't think he's that inventive in those areas. I don't think he offers too much in those areas apart from being a body. But he is very physically. He's developed into like a real force, and he's very dynamic. And I think that he's showed better quality on the ball. There's some decent balls coming inside, some decent switches. Amorim mentioned post game that he's better on the right hand side, that's where he'll want to try and play more, which is interesting. So maybe the inverted element of these wing backs isn't as hugely important to him as we kind of think, maybe. But yeah, I think it was I just have a kind of a bit of a hang up with Dallo. So a lot of people obviously rate him really, really, really highly. Some people think he's shit. I'm not, just definitely more leaning onto the good side, but I don't think he's like the answer for us in one of those wing back positions long term. But he's definitely nowhere near the biggest problem at all. Nowhere near in our squad. He's more on the verge of, he's completely fine. And he is completely fine. I think as a squad player for a really healthy, title challenging team, he is the squad rotation wing back if you have better quality in those areas. And I think the possession is becoming more of a weapon for Manchester United. If we look at, where were we at? We were at 72% possession against Bodo Glimt. We were at... Where were we at? What were we at? Do we not want to give any... Are we not interested in giving stats? 60%, right? So it's... and in the second half, it was a lot higher, right? So second half of the Ipswich game, and then for the whole game against Bodo Glimt, possession became a weapon because we... the pinball football that Gary Neville just loves, and he would constantly reiterate during Ten Hag's tenure that the last thing we want is possession-based football at Old Trafford. It's boring, and we need this kind of like dynamic back and forth football, which is impossible. You're not robots. I always said the best pressing teams are the best possession teams. Like the two best pressing teams, or three, say City, Barcelona, then City, then Liverpool, right, or whatever. And those three teams spring to mind. Barcelona were the best possession-based football team that's ever been, and then they had all the energy when they did give the ball away to get it back, right, so quickly. Manchester City, exactly the same. So good on the ball, keep you penned in so much that when you do have the ball and you do break out, they're on you so quickly because they're so rested that they can give these 100% sprints. And once you have 6 or 7 100% sprints come at you, eventually you will probably lose the ball. Liverpool also, contrary to popular belief, were a possession-based team. Like once Klopp started dominating, like winning and challenging for titles and getting the Champions League finals, teams are sitting in a low block. What did you think? People just think that Liverpool were playing this ping-pong football. No, they were controlling games, penning you in, but launching crosses in. And yes, when the other team, they weren't like City completely dominate to the nth degree, but Liverpool still dominated possession for most games, especially at Anfield. Teams dropped in. So Liverpool were kind of just missing out midfields a lot and going more direct, but they were still a predominantly possession-based team that then pressed really well when they gave the ball away. And for Manchester United, we've seen that we've put possession back into our arsenal, and that's very important because we saw out and we basically turned Ipswich into a non-dangerous outfit or proposition for us in the second half, apart from a few slight hiccups. And then we saw against Bodo Glimt when possession was kept for the whole game, when we had those two counters on the transition that hit us. That can happen, and is going to happen with this quality standard of player, and also how early we are in the process. Things are all good though, as in it's like, if you're a Man United fan now and you've got like, I don't know, and if you've got that attitude towards how we're analysing what's going on, then like you're so barking up the wrong tree as into what you're trying to get out of football, because this is all good, this is all interesting, there's enough there to chew on, there really is, and this manager's really I really like him, not because I've been so amazed what I've seen in these two games and he's a football genius. No, it's the package, isn't it? It's the kind of the speaker, the social element, he's likable, the the team behind him, how clear he is, how honest he is to. So we feel like where it feels like I've been in the training. Okay, the way that Amorim speaks, the messaging that Amorim gives us as fans, that would only be given. Ten Hag would only speak like that to his coaching staff in Carrington. So it feels like we're in Carrington talking to Ruben Amorim in a closed inside, like insider information. That's how Amorim talks compared to Ten Hag. And you see the all the onus has been put on the players. So all we're doing here, it feels like Amorim's come and he's taken a seat next to us, and we're all looking at the players, and Ineos are behind us as well. So it feels like that Amorim and the structure above Amorim are with the fans, evaluating this team and how well they can cope and develop within this structure, whether that's the formational structure or the structure of Ineos and the expectations that the board and the directors and the football directors and the technical directors and Amorim and his staff, where all the onus is on the players, right? And he's doing it in a really good way. He's mentioned half the squad in press conferences by name, and most of the times it's about what they need to improve. And it's fine because, like he said, the messaging is the same from him and from Ineos and the structure. So if an agent wants to ring Wilcox or Ashworth, they're like, yeah, bro, what's the crack? Yeah, that's what he said. Do you not agree? I think we agree. We think he needs to improve in these areas. Why has he got a problem with it? No, it's good. Just checking. Yeah, that's the way the phone calls are going to start happening. That's the way they're going to be. But yeah, it was all around good. And again, I haven't really spoke about the actual game and what transpired in the game. But for me, there's so many people that can break down tactically what's happening in every single transition of the game. Well, I don't have time to do that. I'm not doing that. And two, it's more about what we can take from this game into the next game. So it's about re-evaluation for me. After a game's finished, we re-evaluate everything that we have, and then we come up with a new kind of like updated thesis of each kind of player and the squad as a whole, and Amorim and his in-play management. And do you know what I mean? Like it's more interesting for me to kind of have an updated view after each game as to where we are. And I feel like there has been marked improvement. I feel like there's still quality that needs to be starting together. I don't think that we've had the perfect lineup yet. I think personally, hopefully, that he's kind of running. He said everyone's going to play, so everyone feels part of the team. Nemanja is coming back still, but I really want to see when he kind of. There's no way on earth that Ahmad and Mainu aren't going to be starting week in, week out. There's no way on earth Ugarte is not going to be starting week in, week out. And it seems like there's no way on earth that Højlund probably is going to be starting quite a bit week in, week out. I do really want to see Xerxes in a good functioning setup in terms of the profiles around him. But yeah, also we played obviously so much higher. We managed to pen teams in, and we were actually recycling the ball around their box at times, which for me is just beautiful to see, because that, even though it wasn't necessarily done to the highest level, we were offering enough threat that they were camped in their own box, and we were actually playing around their box. We weren't on the halfway line, we were actually camped into their box. And when we were giving away the ball higher up, we had enough understanding for after the first game and into this game, where we were penning them and we were corralling them into certain areas of the pitch, and we were picking up the ball. Mazraoui for the goal showed great feet, and I feel like Mazraoui was really good in those areas of when the ball was getting corralled into those kind of like right inside channels. He was doing really well defensively there. As to, I think, Anthony, maybe on the ball and in the attacking areas, it was still quite hitting a brick wall a lot, right? He feels like he's kind of like this little child kind of trying to break through this like unbreakable barrier for him. But I feel like there were parts of his game that were quite good in that wing back position on the ball, and in terms of getting in and around and being kind of like picking up balls. And let's have a look. Maybe not. I mean, who knows, mate? Let's have a look. What was Anthony doing? Anthony. 6-4 touches, 1 tackle, 2 interceptions. Like, so he's got good fit. Like, apart from like Mazraoui, like 5 tackles, 1 interception. So like Anthony was there, like with Ugarte, he was nicking the ball as much as anyone. And I feel like, there were parts of his game that weren't like that bad, and I feel like he can be utilised. Much as talked about, obviously playing as we kind of like switched. I didn't think hugely about the kind of like what Savage was saying in terms of like dropping into a back four. He felt like it was kind of like a slightly the natural movement of the back three in the way that that system works, or the back five. A lot of times back fives drop into a four. It's like that happens regularly. Maybe we were just like a bit more rigid with it in the first game. I feel like obviously playing Anthony and obviously the switch up then with Anthony and Garnacho playing like higher and wider, then it became a lot more obvious. I feel like that was the more kind of like poignant part of that switch up, more so than the defensive side. Because of the player profiles that he had then on the pitch, that's what he went to. He's saying that he's making substitutions in regards to fitness, and he's making, so instead of them being necessarily very tactical. So maybe that's also another reason for certain changes, that he is just kind of like managing loads. All in all, it was a really interesting. Football's becoming interesting to watch as a United fan again. There's going to be times where just the lack of quality just shows. If you persist with not having the quality in those 10 spaces, it'll be interesting to see what he does against Everton. Whether then we do see Garnacho not playing because he's played the first 2 games, and you do see maybe a different player profile in those 10 positions. I feel like maybe that could be something that connects everything a little bit more and gives us a bit more potency of playing through the lines, playing through centrally more. But I feel like all in all, it's good. It's improvement. It's good to listen to him. It's good to see how kind of passionate he is, but not in like a dark, devilish way, like like Pep almost. You know what I mean? Like Pep just looked like even when things were good, he just looked like he was just constantly like overthinking everything. I feel like Amorim has got that kind of like whatever kind of like attitude, like a 2% whatever attitude about it, which I think is really refreshing for a Man United manager. Onwards and upwards for Amorim, and another win in the win in the Premier League against Everton will go a long way, and I think we'll see even more. I feel like there will be a time where this progression will plateau. And I'm not saying it's some crazy progression against Bodo Glimt, but we will see improvement. And then I feel like there will probably be this season a plateau where you might see kind of like maybe similar mistakes happening over and over again, but we probably will reach a ceiling for what this squad can give us. And I wouldn't be surprised if that is hopefully will be European football, but depending on what type of European football is, we're still yet to see.